Hello there everyone, welcome to a Second Thoughts overview of Tehenhauin of the Lizardmen. Now I played through the initial turns, I checked the victory conditions, their mechanics, starting location, buildings, etc. So I have a grasp on how this faction plays out. These are my conclusions, and in the end I'll show you of course some army compositions that I would like to try out. Like always, a small disclaimer that this is not an in-depth guide, but we'll have elements of it. Basically what I would do before starting up a campaign. It should help you out as well to enjoy the faction. So let's go play with Tehenhauin of the Lizardmen. For your short victory objectives, you need to destroy the faction of Clan Pestilence, Clan Spital or Spittle, and Clan Scrat. You'll get it here. And you also need to complete the stage 1 of the Prophecy of Sotek. More on that later, it's one mechanic. Then you need to occupy Loot Razor Sack 30 different settlements. So this is quite a short victory condition actually, because for the most part all that you have to do is in your vicinity, so it's really great. The biggest one will probably be even to occupy Loot Razor Sack 30 different settlements required. Now achieving this plus 3 hero capacity, this is always great, and especially for the Lizardmen. They have some heroes that require tier 4 buildings such as the Oracle, so you do not require a great deal of those buildings to be able to recruit a few more, which is always excellent. Now, in terms of the long campaign victory, changes a little bit. Now, you need to occupy, of course, to achieve the short victory, to occupy Loot Razor Sack 70 different settlements, and then control all provinces of Lustria. I'll save it up for you, so it's basically just really control all of Lustria. It's pretty safe, pretty straightforward. Still quite lengthy, because by the time that you're doing that, often you'll have threats on the southern wastes as well. So yeah, that may cause some issues. You may be attacked by high elves or whoever is over here. So yeah, but still, it's quite a straightforward long campaign, and it shouldn't take that long actually to accomplish. Now, the long victory gives you plus 10 hero recruit rank as always. This is excellent to ensure that caster heroes or even melee heroes are already great once they are recruited. Now, your faction leader, Tehenhauin, he's the prophet of Sotek. So he has plus 200% for Saurus infantry and temple guard units until you complete stage 1 of the Prophecy of Sotek. Now this seems quite impactful, but it's really just in the early game. It doesn't take too long to achieve the stage 1, so don't be thinking that, oh, you always have to go with skinks. No, of course, by all means, after a while you'll be able to definitely benefit from Saurus infantry and temple guards. Now, he also has sacrificial offerings, which are gained from winning battles and can be offered to Sotek to receive a variety of powerful rewards. This is basically just explaining the mechanics that he has, and then the best one that he has is actually the Rite cost. Costs only minus 75% for the Rite of Sotek, which is always excellent. I'll show you in a little bit. This is all having to do with mechanics of the game that he has, so I'll show you in a little bit. Now, in terms of climates, it's a little bit problematic. So basically, because of how the Lizardmen work, I kind of wish they would add a mechanic that with a geometric web you could terraform or something like that, because most of the places are either unpleasant or uninhabitable places. Of course, even in Lustria there's a lot of places that are not exactly good for them, and the Southern Chaos Waste is unpleasant, so it's not the easiest faction ever to conquer the whole world with, but still you may try, you may go for a little bit of domination. If so, I would always recommend that you finish off Lustria and that you avoid going too much to the north, and maybe you try to conquer the southern area as well, which are, you know, most of your good places to conquer are near here. So yeah, that would be the idea should you want to go for a domination. So your starting location is actually quite good overall. You benefit from the fact that you're in a very defensible place and that you're near the ocean, should you require any goodies there. Now, there are no close by 4 settlement provinces. This is a pain, since the Lizardmen do require a lot of buildings to be effective. In addition, even though you have plenty of enemies nearby, there's also quite a lot of friendlies, and at least neutral factions in the beginning. So depending on how Oxyotl, for instance, deals here with the Chaos factions, you might have even a quite solid foothold to expand. Typical expansion should be very straightforward. dominate Lustria. Slowly you will decide if you wish to go further than that. The main issue is that you do not have a typical path. You may have to conquer places that are not connected with your initial area, such as the Skaven cities or the Tomb Kings near that are spread along the coast. This is because most of the initial neighbors are actually quite friendly. You know, you'll be able to confederate, of course, some Lizardmen factions. These High Elves may offer some support, so yeah, don't expect too much threat from that side. But of course, it's difficult to start and say what's next. You know, of course, you can go into the mainland, but I always, for instance, go into the Tomb Kings here. Of course, be wary of the proximity to the Rakarth later on. So in terms of diplomacy, you're some part of the order tide, basically. Lizardmen do tend to stick to themselves, but there are opportunities to ally with those that are nearby, fighting the same enemies, such as the High Elves, such as the Dwarves that will be here, such as Bretonnian Empire, assuming, of course, they even survive. Now, this is tricky because you'll have a lot of good relations with other Lizardmen factions, and both Bretonnians, both High Elves, and both and all the Empire, for instance, with Marcus here, will be at war with some of the Lizardmen. So this may be tricky. I would always suggest that if you choose one of these, that you try to check who is at war. Let's say if you want to go in an alliance with Alberic, just check which Lizardmen factions are at war with Alberic, so that you don't get too many good relations with those. You know, any treaties or anything like that, just avoid it so that you can get a good alliance with him. Of course, nothing wrong with you sending an emissary, just getting, you know, that sort of assistance from the mainland. Now, thus, your enemies will most likely be everyone that is not a Lizardmen faction. So, depending on the progress, you may have to face even a few Lizardmen factions, but they're very keen on confederating, especially when you're becoming more powerful. Outposts from Bretonnia, from High Elves, from Empire, I would get, of course, these units, so flying units, of course, really good from Bretonnia or any cavalry of theirs, but I'll always go with the flyers. In terms of the High Elves, of course, sisters or any other archer units as you lack, and some artillery from the Empire. Of course, you can also get from the dwarfs if you wish, or some of their, you know, flying entities, even from the dwarfs if you wish. But yeah, basically that's all that you need. The front line is something that you don't lack, and definitely it will take quite a few tries to get even an alliance with some of these, so you already have a few notes. A note on diplomacy here. So at one point you will lock the war with Skaven. So basically all that this fact that you can actually engage in diplomacy, you will not be able to do so. So this is very relevant because every Skaven faction will be able to start confederating as well with one another. Then this drastically modifies gameplay. They can immediately become really powerful. So, yeah, be prepared for quite some heady campaigns here with Tehenhauin. In terms of mechanics, let's start with Lord Croak. He's just insane. A nice hero to have in any army. I like having him on a basic Lord army so that he can shine on his own, but you can definitely join him with anyone that you prefer. Okay, for a powerful, really powerful combo. He's really a damage dealer. People just love to showcase how much damage he can actually do with the Deliverance of Itza and others. But yeah, in essence, he will provide a lot of bonuses for your faction as well. So don't neglect him at all. He's a really cool character and a wonderful legendary hero to have. Now, for the second mechanic, we do have the rights, basically. Now, the rights are fairly decent, although some of them are costly. You have Primeval Glory, which gives you an army based in Feral Carnosaur, Stegodons, and Bastillodon units that will spawn you in your faction's capital. Do note, this costs upkeep, so it may cause you a lot of trouble as well. And it gives you the army ability of the Feral Cold Ones. You also have the right of Sotek, which is much cheaper for this faction, which you should always be benefiting from this. It causes attrition to enemy armies and gives a lot of buffs to Skinks, Chameleon Stalkers, Red Crested Skinks, and also for Pterodon units. So, in essence, this will make all of your cheaper armies really buffed up, so it's really cool. And it adds that ambush success chance, so by all means try ambushing as soon as you get with the Rite of Sotek. It also has a good cooldown. You'll be able to have this more of the time, so yeah. Then you have Rite of Ferocity for more experience gain, income from post-battle loot, recruit rank. Maybe this is one is good to use when you're about to recruit a huge army. Pop that one in, you'll be able to recruit much faster, so yeah, that's the sort of idea. And finally, Rite of Awakening is to awaken a good lord, a caster lord, the Slan Mage Priests. They're very effective, and they have access to different lores of magic that you don't have in any other way, so by all means. Now, in terms of Sotek himself, he still has the sacrifices to Sotek. With each battle, he'll gain some sacrificial offerings, and then you can use them for different objectives, different goals, basically. More leadership for skink units, an army ability there, some casualty replenishment. As you advance, you'll get better ones, so global recruitment duration, as you can see here, or unlocking a random follower. This is nice, actually. Some more growth here, for instance, and culminating here with a great invocation of Sotek as an army ability. You also have blessed spawnings ideas here, so yeah, definitely just sacrifice on the spirit, get all that you need, and that's about it. Now, in terms of the specific prophecy of Sotek, so it has 3 stages. I'll only show you 2 so that it doesn't spoil too much. But the first one only needs you something basic, to perform 5 rituals and to own the entirety of 2 provinces, and then it gives you, by achieving each, some rewards. And then you have the stage 2, which is the Skaven War. This is an interesting effect because it reveals all Skaven in the map, and basically all Lizardmen, because they are at war with all Lizardmen, so you'll get that. And then diplomacy with Skaven is locked, and the diplomatic relations with Lizardmen are increased. So if I show you right now the diplomacy screen, you'll see that we are at war with every single Skaven faction. And of course we gained some good diplomacy with the other Lizardmen factions. So yeah, that may be cool. But always remember that this is a specific mechanic for Tehenhauin. You'll always get into war with every single Skaven faction. Now, in terms of the geomantic web, that's the last one that I'm going to show you here. So, geomantic web, basically what you do have is a system that allows you to get some bonuses, some specific bonuses, by upgrading the specific building that you have. So for instance, your edicts will become better because you'll increase the geomantic web's strength, of course, and this goes from capital to capital. As you can see here, every single one is connected. Okay, let me show you the buildings here just so that I can show you the building that you would need is always this one. By trying to build all of that, it will indirectly improve the commandments, so of course it will improve the effects, and it will be really good. It's kind of like a soft bonus. Once it starts really kicking in, that's when you're going to realize that you have a lot of possibilities for more armies and such. So yeah, that's really cool. And note that the effectiveness here always increases relations with Lizardmen. So Lizardmen is probably one of the easiest factions to confederate with one another, so that's really cool as well. And finally, one thing that I was missing is the blessed spawnings. So from time to time you'll get some specific missions, and then you can obtain these blessed spawnings, which are greater versions of the units, and it is as well a secondary pool for instant recruitment. So you notice that it doesn't cost anything. All that I need to do is just recruit these guys. I'm about to do that actually to fight this force here, and the good thing is that I don't have to spend the upkeep, so I can just they're available whenever I need. I'll just recruit them, fight the battles, and yeah, that's it. So yeah, that's all the mechanics here for the Lizardmen. For your province edicts, nothing really specific for this faction. So you have your growth and income from all buildings. You also have the recruitment cost reduction, more recruit rank, more leadership, more weapon strength there for armies in the province. So kind of like both of recruitment and basically fighting one. You can also have the control, lesser chance of plague spread, and duration penalties. Don't neglect this, especially because you started war or you're getting to war with Lord Skrolk, which, you know, he does causes his plagues. So, and then, you know, a bunch of other good ones, and also the army ability here for Holy Stella to decrease enemies, you know, enemies base missile damage and accuracy. That's cool against the Skaven as well as others, of course. Then we have the research rate, which is one that it's one that I really love to have, and especially important for the Lizardmen. So, and also with lesser construction costs, less construction time, and the chance of winds of magic increasing in strength when charging province-wide. So, don't neglect this. Magic is really important for the Lizardmen as well. And that research rate is really cool. Of course, all of these can be increased, and notice, research rate plus 10%. These can be increased with the geometric web, so don't neglect the geometric web. It's really important, especially for some of these edicts, so for the edicts, of course. Even here with the income from all buildings, of course, and the growth. So yeah, don't neglect those, you won't regret it. Now, we still have the army stances to speak of. So you have Astromancy, which gives you some vanguard deployment for certain units, which is really cool. Some ambush defense success chance. So this is cool to fight off against those Skaven because they'll try to ambush you. And of course, it does have this line of sight, which is also good to ensure that you don't miss out, you know, anyone that may be, you know, causing some troubles to you. Then we have the channeling for Winds of Magic Power Reserve at the cost of 10% movement, of course. Encamp, which is quite a typical. Costs 50% move to start, enables replenishment, immune to most attrition, of course, some ambush defense success chance as well. Then we have the one that I'm doing right now because I want to ambush or try to ambush, so 25% cost for the ambush stance. And then you have Force March. Note that you lack a raid stance. So Astromancy is very useful against the Skaven and Zinj due to avoiding some ambushes, but that lacking of raid stance, sometimes you may get into some trouble with the income, and lacking that, well, it means you're gonna have to fight, basically. In terms of buildings, you don't have any special buildings in your starting province. It should be noted that the blood shrines of Sotag are actually, this building here, are actually quite important later on for the prophecy. So at one point, you'll need to start building up to this, because that's how we will unlock the next stages, of course. Now, one note here is that also Schlanzek, which is your initial province, it does start with level 2 spawn pools of the brave, so you'll gain access at least to some chameleon units, which are really cool, and that is also important to note. Now, you need 8 buildings for full military, and that includes the armory for some units that are required, so such as the horned ones, sacred crossing, or temple guards. So be wary. Only 3 of those, including the army, of course, can be built in minor settlements, but try to do so because there's a lot of buildings to do. You'll have the Star Chamber, you have the Scrying Pool, which also gives you research rate. It's important, don't neglect this. And then you have the Geomantic Buildings. So the Lizardmen have this issue where they have too many buildings to build up and too few slots, so you'll have to be careful and have to plan out a little bit more than any other faction in the game, I believe. Now, infrastructure, it does have growth, casualty replenishment rate, then it has income, basic income building, and a basic control building as well, and then of course the income from buildings, and includes the geometric web here. And in minor settlements, what you do have there is this one, the lodestone, so it increases income from buildings and gives you a little bit more of local recruitment capacity. Note that all of these buildings, most of the buildings, also unlock specific technologies, so at one point you will have to build at least one of those. Okay, The Scrying Pool, just to speak a little bit more, it does give you campaign movement range for your armies, which is excellent, and less hero action success for enemies and more for yours. Research rate is also important, so make sure that you get a couple of them just to ensure that you can go up in the research as you need. Now, important for that research is because there's a lot of stuff and quite good ones as well, but they take quite some time. So, basically how it works is that you'll have these sequences here, and then you have to unlock this one to start unlocking those, and then you have to unlock this one to start unlocking those. That's basically the idea. There's a lot of stuff here, including buffs to your units, including more leadership, more recruitment ranks for them, less upkeep for sure. I believe there is one over here. Yeah, so more recruit rank, less recruitment cost. There's upkeep stuff, lower recruit rank here, casualty replenishment rate. So there's a lot of good stuff over here. I would recommend, of course, especially with Tehenhauin, just go for something that focuses on the skinks to ensure that they fight better. Especially, you're gonna have a much basically a very good early game with Tehenhauin, surprisingly, because he focuses on skinks. So yeah, that's a really cool idea. And you'll need a lot of research buffs to ensure that you can get all the research that you wish for your campaign. So in terms of the lords and skills, basically you already know legendary specific skills, yellow line, the casting line, of course, then you have the red line or in blue line, referring to campaign and army, of course, respectively. So with the blue line, it does include, as I like, the reduction of upkeep here and the replenishment rate, but they're in the second part, and it may take some time, maybe not going there with every single one, just with the ones that are going to have, you know, the real powerful diners that are quite expensive. Maybe that would be an idea. Okay, red line has very good choices, actually, rather cheap, but you basically go into either Saurus units or Skink units. That's basically it. The Skinks also have the advantage of also buffing up some other units, such as those salamanders and hunting packs, so that's really cool. Now, a special note is, of course, the dinosaurs are nearly all based on one skill set, which is excellent. Of course, there's a couple of them here in the Hunt Leader, but yeah, Beast Driver, you can buff nearly every single dino there that you like to use. Now, a special note to heroes, let me showcase in the buildings, it's much easier, so that you do have your Skink Chiefs that actually provides replenishment, so I like to have them, one of them in the army just to provide that extra replenishment, which is much easier. Then you have some Score veterans, it's a very good melee hero. You also have the Skink Priests and then the Skink Oracle. This Skink Oracle, of course, really powerful hero. It starts immediately with a mount, so that's one of the best things. It's easier to get the mount here because the Troglodyte with his mount, it's a tier 5, but the Oracle is only tier 4, so you can get him much sooner. Now, every kind of lord has specific buffs for specific units. I'll show you in just a little while. And magic is also really important. You do have access to the Slan mages, so that they will... I don't believe I have anyone here. Oh, but I recruited one here. Let me show you. Yeah, so this guy here, of course, you can get different slants. I chose one of life so that you can get, of course, the lore of life in a lord, but you can choose the type of lore that you get from a good variety, and that's mainly their idea here. So here are your red line skills for the Lizardmen. They have quite a lot of mixed units, so you can have different compositions and buff nearly every unit in that comp very easily. Now, for the most part, I either like to have a rush army or a more defensive army, like something that does a lot of damage early on, or something that can, you know, withstand punishment, of course. So, Tehenhauin has a lot of buffs for Skinks himself, and if you add all that you get from the mechanics as well, they get to the point of being better than the Saurus warriors. So here's a couple of possible compositions, going either into some more dinosaurs or going into some Croxigores for some extra health and tankiness. This is one of my favorites, possibly, because it just works well, and it's amazing that it works well. But definitely, having some ancient engine of gods over there, it's always nice. And you can notice that it's quite inexpensive in terms of redline skills, allowing, of course, the Tehenhauin to benefit from that, and getting into his own lore of beasts, for instance, and having someone else do a different lore, and that combination in magic is really cool, of course. Now, in terms of other compositions, of course, nothing wrong with going with Temple Guards, with Croxigores, with a very steady army, or trying to put a lot of single entities in your armies. I like this one, for instance, for being more of a missile-heavy dino idea, or this one for being, more of a tankiness. Let's go with some Carnosaur for anti-large and some Dreadsaurians. Let me put all of them in an army just for fun. That sort of idea. Then finally, you do have some different lords that benefit different compositions. So for instance, skink leaders may benefit with more melee defense for those skink units, or missile strength, or you can go into more for the cold ones and Pterodon riders. So by all means, that's the idea that I want you to have here. So for instance, this would be an army that of course I chose to buff their charge bonus, and of course less upkeep, which is always important. So yeah, that's the sort of idea. Don't neglect the flyers. They're really important. They're really great in many matchups. So because they're armor piercing, most of them, and the effect of having those bullets, it's really nice. Now, finally, just some nice unit compositions based on more Saurus warriors. You can replace these with skinks as well, as I've done here for different compositions. But I could go on with compositions. It's one of the easiest one to just try out. Oh, let me see if I can use this, and definitely you can. Not a lot of cost in terms of redline skills as well, so it's really nice to have some variations. I think I'll never get tired of coming up with different variations for the Lizardmen armies. As final conclusion, well, if you want a faction to play with the skinks, by all means, don't neglect Tehenhauin. You're gonna get some dinosaurs to support, and you get a really fast, strong army capable of doing a lot of damage fast. If you are also on point with fighting the major battles under the influence, for instance, of your rights, as well as the sacrifice effects, then you're gonna be capable of doing a lot of damage. You're gonna be facing any enemies with just skinks. Now, it is difficult, as always with Lizardmen, to get a hold of every building that you need to pursue. The best part of Tehenhauin is that he does really not need to upgrade that much, Just the skink relies on skinks for a very long time, gives you actually precious time to build up, to grow, to get the buildings that you need later on. Now, as always, your army does consist still of good infantry, good skirmishers, good cavalry and flyers, good monstrous infantry, a great and vast array of single entities, some of the best in the game, lacks typical artillery, and lacks some range overall. That is why, with outposts, that's where you should go for if you manage. Replenishment is average because mostly of the climate, as I've mentioned. So yeah, it's one of the annoying things regarding Lizardmen. Otherwise, I would recommend Lizardmen for anyone to play, but they are quite a difficult faction just because of the climate. Now, time to fulfill your prophecy by leading and going with your skinks and Tehenhauin.